Ladies and gentlemen, I need you to listen to me. I need you to listen closely. They can deny the facts, okay? They can deny the logic, right? But you can't deny the math when it's staring you right in the face. And in Pennsylvania, statistics are starting to show some extreme irregularities. And when you couple that with the Dominion software glitch that seems to be going around like the flu, there seems to be some very, very strange coincidences. This video is going to give you the latest and greatest, most up-to-date information about what's happening in Pennsylvania with the Dominion glitch and across 4 other states. I'm going to let you know where we stand. You're not going to see this in the mainstream media. You're not going to see this anywhere else. Stay tuned. Ladies and gentlemen, what an interesting time to be alive, and a historic time to be alive, a adrenaline-filled time to be alive, a worrisome time to be alive for many, and a very difficult time to be alive, a time full of hardship and strife, a time full of digging deep for inner resolve, digging deep within yourself to see that light, to find that good, that silver lining, to find ways to fight back, to find ways to play your role in this historic time. Right? I'm going to play my role just as you have your role to play. And my role tonight is going to be using Joe Hoff's article here on the Gateway Pundit to talk to you about what's happening in Pennsylvania and where we stand with Dominion and these switched votes. And basically, we're going to take it back a little bit through this article. It's going to go through some of the stuff that happened in Pennsylvania. We're going to get to current events, and then we're going to sweep through a few more readings here. I'm going to bring it together in the end, and you're going to see how deep this swamp goes. And it's absolutely insane, folks. So we're going to start with this article here from the Gateway Pundit. Shocking exclusive, we caught them. Pennsylvania results show a statistically impossible pattern behind Biden's steal. Ladies and gentlemen, again, this is from Joe Hoff. I'm using this as sourcing. We caught them. We caught their fraud. And in this post tonight, their first of many, there's apparently much more information coming out. They're going to reveal how the battleground states are being stolen by the Democrats, guys. All right. This is a fix. This is a fix. All right. So on election night, President Trump totally ran away with the election in Pennsylvania. You remember that. I remember that. None of us can deny that. We were both there. You and I, maybe in different states and different areas, but we were both there on election night. And we went to bed with Donald Trump ahead 700,000 votes. A historic lead. Historic. But something changed, guys. Something changed. President Trump was ahead of Joe Biden by nearly 700,000 votes. It was an insurmountable lead. The president was still ahead in Pennsylvania with 56% of the vote to Biden's 43% the next morning. The president was winning Pennsylvania and held a 675,000 vote lead in the election over Joe Biden. You see this chart right here, and I remember seeing this as well when he was up 55.8%. I mean, Joe Biden's a man that wants to literally cripple 3/4 of all of the jobs in that state, not to mention other states like Ohio, Oklahoma, Texas. He wants to literally bring the green revolution through off the backs, blood, and burnt flesh of the oil industry. You're going to have a homeless and poverty problem, a starvation problem, a suicide problem, a crash, the likes of which you've never seen if we allow that to happen. So what happened next? It was corrupt and criminal as the Democrats went about to steal Pennsylvania for Biden. They took a Trump landslide and they criminally flipped it to Joe Biden. And that's where this software glitch comes in, guys. That's what we've been talking about. The glitch deletes votes. It flips votes. It doesn't create votes. It moves things around. It makes things conveniently disappear or get disqualified. According to Pennsylvania's election returns website, on Election Day, President Trump won nearly 2/3 of all votes cast in the state, the president won 2.7 million votes compared to Biden's 1.4 million. And the president's votes, they were nearly twice as many as Joe Biden's. So what happened here? What happened? You can see where things started to change. Pennsylvania began counting those mail-in ballots, the ones Trump warned about for months and months and months and months, talking about how they could be frauded, they could be filled out improperly, they could be counted. There's no rules, no regulation. They're not the proper absentee ballot. No, these are just mass ballots sent out like spam mail in an inbox. Anyone can respond, and if you click the link to get your credit card info, right? There was no reporting on how many votes were outstanding at the end of election night. There was no reporting ever that we are aware of where the state announced how many votes were left to count after the election. The state that allowed votes to come in for 3 more days after the election, I mean, it's insane what they did there. It's insane, okay? They just kept counting. Guys, think about this. The election was supposed to end at 8 p.m. on November 3rd, but on November 4th, ballots came in. November 5th, ballots came in. November 6th, ballots came in. And of course, these ballots were all mail-in ballots. I'm going to keep reading here. We do not know how many mail-in ballots, how many mail-in votes came in during these 3 days. The Republicans were not allowed to observe. How insane is that? The counting of these votes, even though a court order was in place demanding the state to do so. So when the court ordered it, the local officials refused to follow the higher court. I wonder what kind of felony that might be. These actions go against the state's constitution, which state the voting process is to be determined by the legislature. The change in ruling was implemented by an executive and judicial branches. This is an important issue with the Trump campaign, and in their complaints against the state, they're trying to undo these injustices that are being basically thwarted on to Pennsylvania. They're being pushed onto a citizenry that does not want it. All right, guys. Today, the state is reporting more than 2.5 million mail-in ballots. This number was never seen before in the state. Take that in for a second. Imagine the surplus of votes out there that are just coming from wherever, because they've never seen anything like this before. They never had any numbers like this before. They just printed ballots and sent them out, and the integrity of those ballots diminished. Think about counterfeit money. You flood fake money out there. You just keep printing money. Inflation goes up. The value of that money goes down. And, you know, it's kind of the same with these ballots. You keep throwing these ballots out there, and the value of the quality maybe of the return of these ballots is down. I mean, I'm just talking, crap there. That might just mean nothing, but it sure sounds like a strange coincidence that all of these ballots would get sent out there. There would be such a record mail-in turnout, and it would all basically go to Biden. I knew, we all know that there was going to be a lot of votes for Biden in the mail-in, but the amount that they were just finding is impossible. It's just totally impossible. And today the state is reporting more than 2.5 million mail-in ballots. This number was never before seen in the state. Like I just said, as the mail-in ballots were counted, the state began cutting into the 675,000 votes that belong to the president. And eventually they gave the election to Biden. He won 2 million of these 2.5 million mail-in ballots. It's an insane number. So how could the president receive only 1/5 of the mail-in ballots after crushing Biden in the election on election day? And the answer is that this was impossible. I agree with the Gateway pundit here. It's absolutely impossible. I want you to remember something about me, and I don't like to talk about it because I don't want to sound braggadocious. I don't. But I am a PhD student on dissertation. I do understand statistical analysis. I do know how to run statistical analysis, and I have looked at these statistics. I've looked at the charts and the different things that are out there, and though there is some bogus crap on the internet, there are some very, very credible and very likely theories that are being offered out there that need to be explored and investigated, and if proven, prosecuted by the courts. And I believe that we're doing the absolute right thing, bringing it up to the top. And trust me, people would wouldn't be being replaced right now if the chess pieces weren't being placed in the right spot, guys. So I want you to understand that certain things do happen for a reason. I think they did expect some of this to happen. So I want to talk about the data for a second. When we looked at this data with the help of a top-level data expert who remains anonymous, we identified a pattern that is statistically impossible. The president won 2/3 of the election day vote, but with the exception of a basically Philadelphia. Oh, that's a typo. Hey, Gateway Pundit, you got a typo in there. But with the exception of basically Philadelphia, the president won about 80% of the vote in each county of the state. See the blue line in the chart below. Let's take a look real quick. See that blue line right there? That's going to represent the president winning 80% of the vote in each county in the state. Philadelphia is so large, it offsets these numbers and brings the president's results down to about 65% of the state's votes on election day. So if you look at the orange lines below, it says what happened with the mail-in votes is what statistically is impossible. This is the orange line they're talking about, the Trump mail-in percents from the mail-in votes, what was actually for President Trump. So in almost every county throughout the state, the president was awarded a percent of votes 40% less than the percent the president won on election day. If Trump won a county by 80% of the vote on election day, then he won 40% of the mail-in vote for that county, and it was a repetition. If the president won 60% of the vote on election day, he won 20% of the mail-in vote in another county. This pattern occurred in almost every county, with the only noticeable exception of Philadelphia, where the president only earned 30% of the vote on election day. These numbers are so consistent that they are almost certainly fraudulent. And what works in mathematical way? Machines work in a mathematical way, namely counting machines, and Dominion voting software is on counting machines. I mean, these are all coincidences, but they could be absolute hard fact proof of fraud, and it seems like they are. This is statistically impossible and never happens in data sets. And I want to tell you again, as a PhD student who has taken many statistic courses, who knows how to run statistical testing, scientific level statistical testing, I'm going to assure you that that statement is actually very factual. Many things do not happen in data sets, and especially irregularities like that. You usually see patterns. Patterns are what we're looking for, and this is not a credible looking pattern. It just isn't. Again, the fact that the mail-in votes and election day votes mirrored each other, as revealed in the diagram above, is impossible. They got caught. It is clear that corrupt Democrats in Pennsylvania did all they could to steal the 2020 presidential election for Joe Biden. There was no excitement for the Joe Biden campaign. There still isn't any excitement for the Joe Biden campaign, and Republicans are convinced he cheated. I'm convinced he cheated. You're convinced he cheated. And we're not going to stand for a cheater in the White House. Not to mention he has a track record of plagiarism and cheating that goes back 47 friggin' years. Folks, this might say it's the ultimate end-all be-all proof, and you might say, oh, it sounds pretty credible and convincing, but that's not as much as you said there is. But I want to keep going just a little bit more. We're going to take a little bit more of your time here, and I want to talk about how they could have hacked those machines, how they could have put some software in there. We talked on a video the other day about how it just takes 7 minutes and a screwdriver to get into one of these things and upload some software, some algorithm, some code from a USB drive and literally swing votes from one candidate to another. And that's what they're claiming happened here. That's what they're claiming happened. They harvested a ton of votes from Trump and they gave them to Joe Biden through the use of deceptive software. And I'm going to tell you about this story right here. Another written by Joe Hoft. Outsiders with USBs and V cards were allowed in Pennsylvania counting areas with no observers present. That's not suspicious? I think that sounds like a felony to me. Don't quote me. I don't know if it's a felony, but it should be a freaking felony. I wonder what they were doing in there. An IT specialist reached out to the Gateway Pundit and provided more evidence regarding the weak and non-existent system controls in place in the Dominion voting machines and applications. These machines never should have been used in a presidential election. Once IT system expert one IT system expert told us that he never would have approved the Dominion system for use. It is that bad. Another IT expert provided a review of Dominion based on a vendor user guide that he had obtained. Folks, this stuff is absolutely ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. I want you to listen to this just for a second, all right? And this is just coming from a different person. There's people all over. Look, after reviewing the Dominion voting system user manual, it seems the local IT guy who services the machines is theoretically the ultimate political gatekeeper. He has absolute power to decide elections. Think about that for a second. Who are we fighting here? Big tech. These social media giants, all these companies that have access to the gateways of the internet, to the IP addresses that connect all of us together in the digital highways of the internet. Folks, why can't these people adjust and change things? Why couldn't an IT person go in there? It's not about whether it happened or not. It's about could it happen or not? And it could most absolutely happen. And we don't have to worry about the former question I just asked because there's a mountain of evidence that it did happen. We've all been looking at it. And the media mainstream and the political elite on the left and the celebrities and all of the blind, low information voters out there partying and dancing about it, they don't seem to understand what's happening. They're pretending that this isn't real. And it is real. They know it's real. It's all part of their strategy. They already called what's going to happen. They said the other month, Amy Coney Barrett's going in. She's illegitimate, blah, 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 blah. She shouldn't be elected, blah, 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 blah. The Republicans are going to steal the election and Amy Coney Barrett's going to break the tie and the president's going to steal the election and la, 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 la. They're already setting it up to divert the blame. Again, they're like a cheating spouse that's screwing the neighbor and saying, oh, why are you talking? Why are you looking at her? Why are you see what I'm getting at? They project what they're actually guilty of upon other people. They literally predict the narrative that's coming. So they already said the other month that Trump's going to win the election. This whole office of the president-elect is a sham. There is no office of the president-elect. It's a company they made so they could stand in front of a logo. None of this stuff is real. It's a horse and pony, friggin' smoke and mirrors, dog and pony show. It's a bunch of crap. It's a bunch of crap that could literally spark some of the worst unrest we've ever seen in this country. But I digress a little. I want you to see something. This is in one of the Trump lawsuits in Pennsylvania. This is literally right out of the lawsuit. So claim 152 right here. In Delaware County, an observer in the county office where mail-in ballots were counted witnessed a delivery on November 5th, 2020 of V-cards or USB drives in a plastic bag with no seal, no accompanying paper ballot. The V cards or USB drives were taken to the back of the counting room where observer access was limited. There was no opportunity to observe what happened to the V cards or USB drives in the back counting room. Folks, this is wrong. This is wrong. All right. The entire election, it says it right here. The entire election could have been decided in these back rooms with nobody present. As crooked officials, crooked people, whoever, people that just randomly came in there with these USB ports, with some tiny screwdrivers, maybe, with some inconspicuous demeanor on their face, looking innocent, possibly committing the worst corruption, voter fraud, stealing of election, treasonous crime in the history of this country. Let that sink in. Let that gravity take it to the bottom of your gut, because that's the absolute truth. Our IT expert, I'm reading again here, our IT expert then located an audit of the Dominion system in California, which is out on the internet. You can find it. You can click it right here. You can go to the Gateway Pundit and find this article, and you can click it and see for yourself. I did. In the related audit report, the state of California showed a high-level diagram of the Dominion system, which could be similar to the setup in Pennsylvania. Obviously, we can't see this. I can do a little zoom in here. We can try to take a little look. It's just basically the flow diagram showing ballot boxes here. the ballots being taken out of the ballot boxes. They go into these image cast central. They're these scanning kind of machines. And then the ballot images are counted. The results are filed. There's a validation process. There's all of these different democracy suite EMS results, tally reporting, democracy suite server, the ballot images. They have all of these different people and checks and balances. And right up here, these are the polling location, the provisional, the early voters. They go down through this system that brings it through these four right here. There's an image cast X, an image cast BMD, another image cast evolution, and a precinct. I mean, there's so many moving parts involved in this. And I'm going to reveal a little something about myself. I'm not going to tell you what I actually do, but I do work in an industry that works with high-level government technology. I'm not going to get into that. I can't really make that public at the moment until maybe I do this full-time and don't do that anymore to support my family, but I do have children. They need to eat. I hope you understand and respect that. I'm not trying to get doxxed and get fired with that going on, but and maybe I just handed a bullet to some of those lefties out there that hate me. That's all right. I like dodging bullets. Anyway, I'm going to tell you right now, these systems, these different things, they can easily be broken into. They can easily be hacked. They can easily be manipulated. They can easily be altered. They can easily be infected. They can easily be forged. Folks, this isn't a foolproof system. The diagram shows that there are laptops or workstations on site that some of the workers can access after the ballot images are scanned in. Our expert states that he kept thinking about the USB drives in the lawsuit and immediately noticed this is where the election data, the forged faked images, could be inserted. Right there. In the audit report, the auditor states the Secretary of State ran the functional test as if it were a jurisdiction that had just purchased the voting system. Testing of the system began by setting up all equipment in a configuration that mirrored a production voting system. The DS 5.10 architecture allows election officials to use one or more permanent servers and set of central office voting devices known to be running unaltered, certified software and firmware to create memory cards before each election and to use another physically separate sacrificial server and set of voting devices after the election to tabulate results and generate reports. The transfer election specific data, the ICP2 machines utilize SD cards, okay? That's the same little things that go in some phones still. The ICC and ICE machines utilize CF cards. The ICX utilizes USB sticks, the little flash drives stick in. The election-specific data files transferred on these cards are encrypted. An I button is required to unencrypt the SD and CF cards for the ICP2, the ICC, and the ICE. The smart card is needed to unencrypt the USB sticks. I know for some of you I'm speaking absolute Egyptian. I do apologize. These are all IT and networking terms and different things like that. The key used for these devices, and that would be like a cryptographic key. You would insert it, it would unlock the crypto, and then that would go in. A key specific to that I button can also be used. This would prevent a malicious actor from accessing the entire system with just one key. So they're saying that there could be a dual key system installed if they choose to do so. The audit reported that during this source code vulnerability review, one potential vulnerability was discovered, and the level of access required to take advantage of this potential vulnerability would be open to a variety of actors, including voters, poll workers, an election official insider, or even a vendor insider. This potential vulnerability is a more widespread potential. Polling place procedural controls are one method of mitigating this issue, with poll workers actively verifying that the USB ports are covered and the covers are sealed to prevent access. And this means that unless you block the USB ports, they're at risk of being compromised. They do that with highly sensitive equipment, things that are of a high classification level that you do not have access to, or they do not allow you to take or put in anything the USB slot. So that's a general government precaution. It's actually fairly normal. I've seen it in my line of work. Vote stealing software could easily be constructed that looks for undervotes on the ballot and marks those unvoted spaces for the candidate of the hacker's choice. This is very straightforward to do an optical scan bubble ballot. And if fraudulent software is installed, it could change all of the votes of any voter who selected this option, because the voting machine software would know in advance of printing that the voter had waived the opportunity to inspect the printed ballot. All right, folks, they would waive that opportunity to inspect the printed ballot. All right. In situations like Arizona, where voters were given Sharpies instead of pens, we all heard about that one. That is absolutely true. Dominion systems could identify ink types and just kick these votes right out of the system. The Dominion system was ripe for fraud and never, ever should have been allowed near the Democrat Party, ladies and gentlemen. So, folks, that is just insane. Okay? It's absolutely insane. They knew about these vulnerabilities in the systems. And it's not just a bunch of conspiracy theorists coming out. It's not just Trump upset because he's losing an election, because he's not actually losing an election. He's actually winning the election. And based on reports by auditors, IT specialists, data analysts, and statisticians, just like we were talking about in the previous articles, the number of illegitimate votes identified in the 4 swing states are enough to overturn the election. Remember, I told you earlier, the Democrats called it. They said what was going to happen. They stated the narrative because they want their people to think we cheated. They said we illegitimately put in Amy Coney Barrett, which it's not illegitimate. It's the constitutional duty of the President of the United States of America. They said this was going to be contested. They said just keep counting in Philly. They said all of these things, and now it's just playing out. So it'll go up there and they'll call us cheaters. And we'll have to see where it goes from there. But I want to read a little bit more of this article before I let you go here. In a little over a week, groups of volunteer IT specialists, data analysts, auditors, and more have uncovered enough potential fraud to overturn the 2020 election. Over the past week, groups of professionals have gathered to ensure election integrity was present in the 2020 election. These groups of Trump and America-loving patriots are working on their own time and digging into election data to identify potential evidence of fraud. Despite the MSM promoting a group of experts claiming this was the most secure election ever, the real evidence, folks, the real evidence out there, ladies and gentlemen, indicates a totally different story. Again, this is from the Gateway Pundit, the third article I'm reading to you tonight from Joe Hoft. Okay, guys, in just a week, we've uncovered enough potentially fraudulent activities and votes to overturn the entire election, guys. We've reported on numerous incidents of fraudulent activities across the country in this election, from false claims of a water main break in Atlanta, and we saw that that was BS and disproven, to control deficiencies in the electronic voting machines used across the country, the lost flash drive in Milwaukee, to the turning off of the signature fraud confirmation software tools in Nevada. This election was a mess, and I'm adding to this. All of these things will be investigated. They have to be investigated. Are literally the integrity of our Constitution, the fabric of our nation rests in these things being investigated. Okay, folks, there are numerous legal questions as well, such as how to address the numerous illegal and corrupt activities the Democrats carried out in Michigan to steal the election. Shockingly, Pennsylvania may have been worse. And you can come here to the Gateway Pundit, find this article, and click this. This is the Trump team complaint in Pennsylvania. It's going to show the entire proof of what they're claiming. There are enough legal issues identified to date to indicate that this was the most corrupt election in U.S. history. So what's the impact, guys? Today, we can say that there's enough information presently available on the potential fraudulent activities that, when quantified, would again overturn the elections. The third time they've said it. I get it. The biggest potential fraud, though, identified to date is related to the data coming from the machines themselves. And that's what I've been trying to get through. That's what I've been trying to tie together here. Something's fishy with Dominion. This isn't coincidental. It's not a glitch. It's malicious. It's patterned like people are doing it. And things are going to come out into the light. They really are. Things are going to be exposed, and people are going to be held accountable. I have to have faith in that. I'm an announcer. I'm a broadcaster. I'm somebody who loves this country. I'm a patriot, and I have to be optimistic, and I have to have faith that that's going to happen. Now, if it doesn't happen, we have to go to different plannings, different organizings, and different ideas of what the future may hold. But I truly believe that these things will be exposed, and heads are going to roll. So after we identified a number of anomalies where votes appeared to be switched from President Trump to Joe Biden, a group of experts dug into election data and found that this was not an innocent mistake. So by using election day data, the group found millions of votes removed from President Trump and placed in the Biden column. Millions of votes, ladies and gentlemen. When I did a video the other day, it was only in the couple 100,000s we were talking about. Now it's up to millions. All right. That's a big deal. That is more than just a couple hundred here or there. Don't, worry about it. Just concede. That's BS. You got to understand that this is the first time in history this has happened. This is the largest litigation across the largest amount of states for any contested presidency ever in the history of our country. You have to understand the historical gravity of what is happening right now. We've never had big tech like this before. We've never had machines like this before. We never had the environment, the pandemic that they claim to be happening. All of these things, this Pandora's box, this galaxy of chaos happening and weaving in and out and exploding all at the same time. Why couldn't in 2020, the year of COVID, the year of the murder hornet, the year of all of this crazy stuff we never thought would happen, why couldn't that also be the year that a billionaire real estate investor, a billionaire real estate mogul, a billionaire deal maker from New York, who's done great things in his life and been demonized for them, why couldn't this person rise to be a larger than life figure, a General MacArthur-like figure, all kinds of historian, Abraham Lincoln type figure? Sorry for the little brain fart there, ladies and gentlemen. It is getting late, but it's not out of the realm of possibility that Donald Trump is rising, already is, or is going to be a historical figure that they're going to read about 100 years ago when they wonder what saved this country from socialism. They might read about Donald J. Trump in their books, guys. They really might. The president took note of their report, by the way. If you see, he retweeted them. The Boom Trump Tweets report, Dominion deleted 2.7 million Trump votes nationwide. Data analysis finds 221,000. I keep double saying the word 100 tonight for some reason, guys. Pennsylvania votes switched from President Trump to Biden. Guys, there's also other items that were already identified and quantified by others. One report isolated Biden-only votes from the election, which were so large and outside of expectations that they clearly are not reasonable and should at least be reviewed for signatures. Continued statistical analysis shows wild numbers of people who voted only for Joe Biden and didn't vote further down the ticket. And I'm going to read these for those who are listening and not watching. Pennsylvania had 98,000 votes that were just Biden, nothing else. Georgia had almost 90,000. Arizona, 42,000. Michigan, somewhere between 70 and 115,000. Wisconsin, 62,000. That's well over, 100,000, 200,000 votes across all of those different states. I mean, it's not a little couple hundred votes like Al Gore had in Florida. This is a lot of votes we're dealing with. We're dealing with a ton of votes here, guys. And I mean, it just keeps going on. These votes have not been confirmed by the Trump team or the states. They're not final. There's ongoing work on the dead people who voted, the felons who illegally voted, the children. I'm adding that. The children who voted and more. Democrats have a history of committing voter fraud. We know how crooked it can be in Philadelphia, in Georgia, in Atlanta specifically, in these Democrat-run strongholds of corruption of 1960s, 70s, 80s, whatever year it was, just nasty mafia style voting strong arm tactics. These people aren't good people. They might be politicians, but they're bullies. They're criminals. They're crooks. They're frauds. They deserve to be locked up. They deserve to have the swamp drained out of under them so they can't breathe anymore. They deserve to be constricted like that. They do. Folks, this has been absolutely nuts. We know it's been nuts. We have all of the media, including Fox News, pretending like Trump isn't even the president anymore. Facebook removed president from his Facebook profile. He's now a political candidate. This is the coup. This is the coup, and we are the digital soldiers, ladies and gentlemen. We have to fight. We have to put the real information out there and let you, the viewer, the listener, you have to decide what's real and not real. You have to look at the facts. You have to look at the evidence. And all I'm going to do, and all I'm going to continue to do, is bring you all of the evidence that I can find so that we can do everything in our power to bury these people. I really appreciate you guys watching. I hope you learned some stuff. I hope you got up to date. I hope you enjoyed it. Please send me your feedback. JamesLane@AmericanReveille.com. Go to the website, www.AmericanReveille.com. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please, I'm begging you, leave me a review. It can be 4 stars, 5 stars. Just leave an honest review. Write a couple words for me. It gets me up the rankings in Apple Podcasts, and we need that. We need more exposure. More patriots have to find us. The word has to get out. We have a mission, and we're going to achieve it. I'll see you next time. Oh, good. I am glad you're still here, comrade. I need you to do me big favor. I need you to go and hit this like button right here. I need you to hit this share button right here. And most important of all, I need you to come up here and hit the subscribe button. Yes, you have to hit the subscribe button and subscribe to American Reveille YouTube channel. Good. And then, comrade, when you're done, go up to the parlor. All right, I need you to find the parlor. Go into your app store, your Google Play Store, and find Parler, Parler. Okay, Parler. And when you get on the Parler, either in the app or www.parler.com, you come and find at the James Lane. The James Lane, the owner and the president of the American Reveille. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, thank you this so much, and I look forward to building gigantic, united, right-wing community with you.